Joining me for the replay of day 20 of Love Your Lettering, and today we're going to talk about your first start using the brush pen and brush pen basics and strokes. Good afternoon! So I am kind of surrounded by boxes. I hopefully have all the tools that I need on my desk, though. I'm trying to make sure that I keep my specific lettering things for this week out and handy so that they don't end up in a box that I can't find. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. We are on day 20 of 31 days to love your lettering. Kind of like getting near the end now, and we are on a fun week of using brush pens, which brush lettering is kind of very popular right now, I think, between different fonts that you find, like handwritten style fonts are actually brush lettering. Sorry, and I still have the cold. Yeah, I know. I think probably I'm not going to get better until I start getting more sleep, and that's probably not going to happen until we are unpacked in the new house. So until then, I'll just kind of suck it up and get through it, right? Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. So if you've been following along, you know that our afternoon scopes are supposed to be a little less chatty and more on the straight demonstration. That way those that can't stick around can go ahead and head out as soon as the demonstration is done, and those that have questions can stick around for a few minutes longer to help get any of those questions answered. Hello and welcome. So with all that said, I'll go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon for day 20 of 31 days to love your lettering. My name is Lisa. I blog at CreativLEI.com, which is looking at life creatively. The 31 days to love your lettering was a series that was written in October 2015 as a broad introduction as a broad introduction to how to get started with improving your handwriting and diving into a little bit of creative lettering. And each week we talk about use and styles with different pens. And this week we're talking about brush pens. And as I turn around and start the demonstration, I will get to show you my favorite brush pens, especially for just starting out. And pardon all the floating things in the boxes and all that kind of stuff in the background. We are mid-move, and this coming weekend is our moving truck days, so we'll kind of hang in there, right? So let me go ahead and turn the camera around and get us started. Okay, so here is the sample. You won't have your pens till Friday. That's okay. If you don't have your pens, you can still continue to work in pencil. Of course, today's lesson looks very similar to yesterday's. We're going to go over basic strokes, except instead of using pencil this time, if you do have your brush pen, you can go ahead and use that. Like I said, if your brush pens are not in yet, feel free to use pencil up, and here comes the 3-year-old. If you're new to this broadcast and series and you want to find out more information, you can go to CreativLEI.com/loveyourlettering and find out some more about this, including a link to the full series on the blog. You can find me on Facebook /CreativLEI, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm at CreativLEI, and on Pinterest, I'm CreativLEI Made. Where you can find my lettering and penmanship boards, as well as quotes and things. And most of the videos are on catch.me/CreativLEI, but I have found that in the past week or so, we've been getting some kind of spotty turnover there. So for those that were interested in YouTube videos, I'm going to have to look into that at a later date and find out how I can most effectively film to move the demonstration portions over to YouTube for those that aren't on Periscope and just want a chance to get the videos at a later date. In the blog posts that accompany this series, there are videos embedded from the fall live demonstrations. And if you're looking for the supply list, you can go to CreativLEI.com/loveyourlettering-supplies, and that was an introductory post to this series, but it also lists many of the different types of pens and supplies that I use throughout the series. Everything is not required to get started. You can certainly just get started with a pad of graph paper or a composition notebook of graph paper as well as your favorite pencil and or pens. Yesterday I used the Tombow drawing pencils to get practice with, thank you, with adding pressure and releasing pressure on the up and down strokes, because that is basically, that is the technique that causes that good contrast in the strokes with brush lettering. So the two pens I'm going to use this week are the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pens, and I'll write that out for you. And one of them is considered a hard tip, and the other is considered a soft tip. The hard tip is the blue barrel, and the soft tip is the dark gray or black barrel. And they both are very responsive to the pressure. That's what gives you that real thin hairline stroke on the up and the thicker stroke on the down, because as you're adding pressure, it's going to change the way that brush is moving. So I'm going to start with the soft brush, and we're going to go through some of the basic, please don't do that, some of the basic strokes that, do not put the pencil there, that we did yesterday, pardon me, 3-year-old on the lap, so kind of side conversations here. So just like yesterday, all of our ups are going to be just faint. The pen is going to just barely glide along the paper. And when we come down, we're going to be getting a nice thick line. Because as you add the pressure, that brush kind of splays out. So again, up, down, up, down. These Fudenosuke brushes, as you can see, I'm left-handed, and this responds very well to my natural pen grip. Not there. So if you are right-handed, and that's going to be a little hard for me to do today. Okay, so for my right-handed people, since you are pulling the pen, it should be even a little more fluid for you to go up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay, shh. Okay. So now we're going to do our little wavy lines. So I'm going to come up and go down, up and go down. So as I'm coming down, you'll notice that it kind of tapers into that upstroke, and it's because as I'm nearing that turn, I'm starting to release the pressure to go up. And when I'm making the turn here, I'm starting to add the pressure as I come down. On the barrel of the pen, yes, that is correct. BH is the hard, brush hard, and BS brush soft. At least that's what I'm assuming those letters are for, because that's what makes the most sense, right? Okay, so we can do a line of these, and if you can come back over and correct one. Up and down. Now this pen has been used quite a bit by me, so the tip is it is curved to the bias that I write at. If you start to notice that happening, I hold the pen kind of at a narrow angle from the paper and roll that nib a bit to help recenter the bristles a little bit, especially on your newer pens. That will help a little bit. Okay, so we've got our ups and downs, and again, those of you that are right-handed, you're pulling the pen, but you're still going to do the same thing, very light on the up and adding pressure on the down. This is not as smooth with my right hand because I am a dominant lefty when it comes to writing. But you can kind of get the idea there. That this pen for us lefties is okay, even though we're pushing the pen. That's a small enough brush nib that it doesn't damage the tip or fray the edges the way the felt tip brushes do sometimes when we're pushing them. That's one of the other reasons why these are favorites for me. Okay, the next thing I'm going to make is the overhand loops. So I'm coming up, going down, and looping back up. And going down, looping back up, going down, looping back up, down, so, and just continue on with that line. And it's really a fairly slow and intentional series of strokes there. Yeah, if you don't have brush pens until later this week, continue practicing these strokes with pencil, because the more comfortable and natural that release and application of pressure get, the more smooth it will be once you do get to use the brushes. So again, I'm not worrying so much about my spacing or the size. I'm being intentional about adding or applying pressure and releasing pressure. Okay. Let me switch to the hard tip. So the tip of this one is a little bit blunted because of how much I've used it, but it's very similar to the soft nib. The difference being that the nylon of this brush is just a bit more rigid. And so if your pen is brand new, you're really going to get a very fine upstroke and quite a contrast of the down. So I'm going to do my underhand loops, which are like valleys. So, and I'm looking, because I can see the bias from my hand on this pen, so I'm just looking to find that. So I'm going to come down, go up, down, and you will need to press harder with the hard tip to get the pressure on that downstroke. And I'm going about 3 boxes high, but if that feels like too much space to travel with your hand, start a little bit smaller. Because you don't want to give yourself hand cramps or strain, because it is work to add the pressure to those downstrokes. So if it's more comfortable to make the smaller ones, start by making the smaller ones. Okay, now I'll do that zigzag. So we'll come up, down. So the zigzags are helpful because it's very easy to separate those up and down strokes, very similar to how we did the vertical lines. And again, if your hard tip brush is brand new, you're going to get an even finer upstroke. Let me see if I can grab a new one. I kind of like when it's all kind of comfortably worn in, like a good pair of jeans or sneakers. Excuse me. Alright, and now we'll also do our overhand and everhand hills and valleys again. It's okay. So I'm going to come up and go down. Next stroke, up and down, up and down. I'm going to curve for up. This is the hard tip, but it's pretty broken in, so it it pretty much knows how I want it to move. Let me see if I can grab a newer one. Okay. Here's another. You'll be able to see the difference between the two tips on these. Okay, so on the top is my used and abused one, and my bottom one is a brand new hard tip. So these are both the same pen, except after some wear and tear, that the very tip of that nib, brush nib, is pretty worn. So let me show you that this is super thin, and adding lots of pressure on that down. Super thin. So you can see, yeah, I use my pens a lot, and so it does get pretty worn down. Love Lady Home, or I'm not sure. There has been some issues with both audio and visual at different times through this week. I haven't quite figured out what is going on. I've reloaded the app a number of times, and it's not always. Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, so you can see the brand new hard tip is quite a bit different. You can see what I mean by that super fine upstroke and a more broad downstroke as you add the pressure. But again, because this is a more rigid brush, it does take really putting the pressure on. And you may think you're ruining the tip, but it's not. The pressure is not going to be what ruins the tip. My tips are blunted mostly because I'm a lefty that pushes the pen. So where if you were holding it in your right hand kind of in this direction, pardon the hooked hand, that's not how I write. But when you do it this way, you're not working against the tip of that pen, so you will not blunt it as much as I do as a pusher. Sorry if I can switch hands. So for the right hand, so you're going to come up and go down, and mine is not very smooth because I'm not right-handed, but you'll see, since I'm kind of moving in the direction of the pen, I'm not working against the grain of the nib. So those of you that are lefties, beware of the pushing is going to blunt your nibs, but certainly it's still the usable pen even if it has been blunted a bit. And again, to recenter it just a tad bit, I do like to roll it before I store it. And that just helps to return that to center. Okay. So let's see. So we've got some ups and downs. So now let's do some vertical downstrokes with an upturned exit stroke. So I do these in one stroke because it makes sense to me that most letters would exit up, so you're just kind of following through what you've started. And if you find that they're not connecting, you can go back over in there and connect once you're starting to do letters. Okay, so it's just practicing all those different shapes that we did yesterday. And then if you want to put an alphabet on there, just kind of play with your regular print alphabet as we did in the pencil. And remember that on that down, you're going to go add in the pressure, and on the up, you're going to release it a bit. What you're trying to get your brain and hand to learn is that every time I bring that pen down, I'm adding pressure. Every time I bring it up, I'm going to go really light and release that pressure. My cue, and I'm gonna run out of space. Normally I would skip some more lines so that my ascenders and descenders don't run together, but working one-handed. So it's the spine of the S, that's our downstroke. Remember I said yesterday, even though it's a downstroke, I don't like to cross it with pressure and put those two broad strokes together. I prefer the contrast of the thick and thin. Okay. So again, we're just repeating all the different strokes, and these are the bits and pieces that will make up all of our letters. So when you practice going thin or release the pressure up, apply the pressure on the way down. Just if you had to say it out loud to remind yourself, until you start to feel very naturally that you're going fine up, heavy down, fine up, heavy down. So again, if your brush pens haven't arrived or you weren't able to find one locally, go ahead and continue to practice with your pencil. Fine up, heavy down, fine up, and heavy down. So that concludes today's demonstration. Did anybody have any questions or need to see something over again? You think they sent the wrong ones, you ordered the wrong ones, they say calligraphy on them. These do say calligraphy, actually. So here's the barrel. This is the hard tip, and it's kind of a navy blue. And if you see right there, it says calligraphy pen, made in Japan. If this is what you have, then it's correct. And the soft tip actually says the very same thing. It says calligraphy pen on it, and then this is the WSBS 150. So, yep, those are correct. Can use a Tombow Professional dual brush. Are you talking about this one? So these are the Tombow dual brush markers. Yes, the dual brush will work. Here. Whoops. Okay. So the dual brush pens, the big brushes that you usually use for coloring, they absolutely do work for brush lettering. However, if you are brand new to brush lettering, it is a different tip. It's a more broad felt tip. So I don't know if you can see that. That's, let's see, since I'm sure it would be considered soft, but if you can see the difference here, let me get these. I know it's one-handed. So you've got the dual brush is towards the bottom, and the soft Fudenosuke is towards the top there. It's very much a big range in size there. So if you're going to use the dual brush, the art pens, you're going to want to work bigger, because on the smaller letters, you're going to have a harder time transitioning from that broad downstroke to a fine upstroke, because you've really got to change the tip of the pen a bit. And if you're lefty, these are not as easy to learn on. I really find that the Fudenosuke pens are much better and more forgiving for left-handed. The dual brush seem to be a more natural flow for right-handed people who pull the pen as they write, where, with us lefties pushing it, we're really kind of beating up that tip. I'll show you quickly my use of them, and I will tell you that it's not my go-to. You're a lefty and ordered the parallel pen from Pilot but having a hard time. Could I demo? Yeah, I could probably do that. Okay, sorry. Whoops. You can see I'm mid-packing, so everything's kind of loosey-goosey here. Okay, so here's the dual brush, and here's my down and up. I really have to not just go light, but I almost have to change my hand position to pick that pen up more at a 90-degree angle from the surface in order to get that upstroke. Now, I know that there are others that do it a lot more fluidly, but I find that for my pen hold, it's difficult for me to get a smooth upstroke with these, with the dual brush pens. It's just not as natural of a flow for a lefty as, let's see. So those that are right-handed and pulling the brush, and I'm, like I said, I'm not right-handed, and I'm also working one-handed here. Since you don't have to change the position of the pen, you may get a more smoother, or more smooth upstroke than us lefties do, because you're just kind of gliding along instead of pushing. Yes, I will. Okay, how's that? It does come with time. I would say if you're doing even just daily practice for 5 minutes a day, I would definitely say that probably in a matter of weeks you're going to start noticing a difference in your consistency, because the more you train those muscles and gain that muscle memory, the more smooth it's going to work. And A is hard on the lowercase. Yeah, we're going to talk more about alphabets tomorrow, so I didn't want to go into too much with the alphabets, but it is this video, not this specific video. There is a video on the blog already on the day 20. It's called Brush Pen Basics, and you can access that from the index of the series, and there is the catch video from the October series is embedded into that post, I believe. If it's not, I'll try to move this one or tonight's over to there. Okay. Any other questions about the brush pens? Would it be the same as for the Prismacolor? I do not have Prismacolor brushes. I have Copic brushes, and just a few of them, and they are about the size of the Tombow dual brush, except that they're alcohol-based. But I find that they work very similarly, except it's not felt tip, it's more of a nylon foam. So it does get a pretty decent contrast between the up and down strokes. All right. So, any other questions about the brush lettering? I know someone was asking about the parallel pen. Sorry if my hand was in the way. With the upstroke being fine on the brush, that's going to come. Okay. Sistel McClary. Alright, so I do have the parallel pen. They are not on YouTube yet, Sylvia. I am going to work this summer on putting the series on YouTube. I had hoped to move some of these videos over, but I found that over the past week or so, they've not been catching cleanly. And so I'm going to try to just film it on its own and work on that, but it will have to wait until after we move. So if you're having problem getting that fine upstroke, if you are a lefty, just bear with it. It's going to just take time. Lefty, and you hold it like me. Okay, so it's really a matter of practicing going really light on the upstroke, and if you want to spend more time doing it with pencil so that you're not damaging the tips of your brushes, definitely get the feel for that until you've got that that upstroke almost invisible. It's so fine. And then go ahead and switch. Sorry. And it just takes a lot of practicing and getting to know the pens and how quickly they're going to react to when you add and release pressure. So this was the soft tip Fudonosuke. And if I zoomed in, you would see, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay. You can see that they're not completely smooth. There's definitely some little jagged edges a bit in there. Just the more you practice with these pens, the more fluid and natural the strokes become. Okay. So, all right. So let me go sidestep a bit for the parallel pen. You haven't gotten to know it yet. Yeah, and it's kind of, any pen has its learning curve, and the broad tip of the parallel pen is similar, because now as a lefty, you're going to need to find a position that is comfortable to hold the pen and get it at that proper angle from the baseline. So if this is my baseline, I'm going to want it at about a 45-degree angle from there. And then finding where my hand needs to sit to maintain that angle, whether it's kind of, and then also working at the slant that's going to help with that as well. So you can practice, you know. You're welcome. It's my pleasure to, it is hard, Lori, to teach the lefties, because I find that most of the lettering or calligraphy teachers I've always had have been right-handed. So it was time to have a lefty one. I didn't do lessons in this series with the parallel pen, but I want to expound upon Love Your Lettering throughout the coming year. And once we get settled with the move, sorry. So we're moving this weekend. And once we get settled with the move, I'm going to be able to get back to writing. And my hope is to, now that we've done the month-long introductory, I would like to have, you're welcome, smaller series for each pen type. So do like another week or 2 weeks with brush pens and styles with the brush pen, do another week or two with parallel pens or the broad tip calligraphy markers, about addressing different styles with that. Oh, it's my pleasure. I really do enjoy this. This has become such a blessing to me and my family to be able to teach this, because it's something that I really love. But again, I'd like to develop that over the course of the year or so. Lots to do. I live in Maryland. Yeah, we live in about central Maryland outside of Baltimore, and we're staying fairly locally, so just moving to the next town over. But yeah, so you're watching from California. Awesome. We're kind of in the midst of early spring, so it's like cold one day and warm the next, but everything is starting to turn green. Thanks. Hey, I got a package. So, got a little thing from Tombo. You heard lived in New York. Yes, I was actually raised in New York. My family lives in Staten Island, one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. So yeah, I was raised there, and I left first for college, and then I left again when I joined the military. So, and we've been in Maryland ever since. The military brought me here, and here's where we stay. My mom grew up in Brooklyn as well, so very familiar. But so if yeah, she's been in rare form this week. I had to, those that were on the afternoon broadcast yesterday, those that were on the broadcast yesterday afternoon know that I got interrupted with her throwing a temper tantrum yesterday afternoon. So I got a pen. So kind of a surprise unboxing. So this has been, it's probably one of the ones on my wish list, which is awesome. For those of you that don't know, I am a Tombow brand ambassador, which means that I don't get paid to promote them, but because I use their products and love their products, yeah, I'm like super stoked and surprised. This might need its own scope. Yeah, no, actually, they send me lots of things to try. That's, the pencils that I used yesterday. I used the brush pens for a while, and especially when I first did this series last in the fall, it was when I really fell in love with them. I've tested tons and tons of pens. As any of you that are lefties know, we go through a lot of pens to find some favorites. And so when I tried the Furunosuke pens, it was like instant love. And so that was really, really fun. And so they sent me one of the Zoom pens, and it's gorgeous, and this matches my website. It's got the teal, and it's got Swarovski crystal on the top. So that's pretty exciting. That was unexpected, and it's a nice ballpoint pen. Yeah, I know you probably looked at my hand today and were like, oh my gosh, those must leak all over. But what happened was I took apart a fountain pen to clean that before I packed it. And so I have ink all over my hands. I'm usually not this messy when I write. I don't use pens that bleed all over the place. But I was like, oh my goodness, it's going to look like my pen has exploded, and it didn't. I was taking apart some fountain pens, to go ahead and put those into the boxes. So I've kind of rambled on. Our afternoon scopes are not supposed to be my squirrely ones, but it was good to connect with you guys this afternoon. If you had any questions about the brush lettering, I'll be back on at 9:30 p.m. tonight, doing the same demonstration, except even more chatty than this. And in the meantime, I've got lots of packing to do, so we're going to get back to that. And I will see you guys tomorrow when we talk about using the brush pen with natural handwriting. What time is it out by me? It is, it's 3:15. I think, if I've set that clock correctly. You're so welcome. Thanks. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you guys later tonight. Can't do it one hand.